Ready to go.
Is it safe to fly?
It is with me.
Oh, you're that good, huh?
I'm the best you've ever been with.
I'm not sure I trust your equipment.
We may be old, but we're sturdy.
What's all this?
Hotel overstocks, local trinkets. I was gonna fly him to Tahiti tomorrow. With your job, I got a twofer.
How handy for you.
Excuse me, just keep this from flying at you. There we go. You have my money?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
It's all there.
I trust you.
Assistant editor for a magazine called Dazzle.
Dazzle?
Yeah.
Never heard of that one.
But you're not exactly the demographic we shoot for. This is it.
Dazzle. Your derriere. 5 exercises to tame the beast. 10 ways to light his fire. For Pete's sake. 10 ways to light his fire. You know how a woman gets a man excited?
How?
She shows up. That's it. We're guys. We're easy. Of course, for that, you can't charge $6 an issue, can you?
Now, does that advice come with a 700, or do I need to pay extra for that?
It's on the house.
Thanks.
There's so much water.
Don't worry. Wherever they are, Woody is going to take good care of your girlfriend.
What do you mean by that?
Come on, let's pick up the pace a little. I want to get to the top before dark.
So where's the beacon? Huh? Oh, let me see. Well, it's this one, right? Tamatanga, the one with the funny-shaped peninsula to the north, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's north, right? Right?
Yeah.
There's no peninsula. Who stole the peninsula? This isn't Tamatanga. So there is no beacon that we're going to turn off, and they're going to come and fix it and find us.
Well, we could be, we could be further to the south. This could be Matanui.
Matanui? And what's on Matanui?
Us.
What? What do I want? What are you doing?
Margot, she'll blush, she won't tell it, but she is an enormous Harrison Ford fan. It's true, isn't it?
Yeah, I am. This is really weird.
That's why we separated you.
Yeah. It's gonna take that way.
Well, this is your intervention.
I mean, to be honest, I'm upset.
Disabuse you of that notion. And you'll help, won't you?
Oh, don't you worry.
I can count on him.
I have to admit something, Harrison. Though Indiana Jones is like one of the most iconic characters ever, my favourite movie that you're in is actually 6 Days, 7 Nights.
Oh.
Very good movie if no one's seen it.
I guess it's still available. I hope so.
I should stay on this side of the couch, shouldn't I? I'm getting too excited.
I have a bunch of DVDs in the back of my car. I'll meet you out in the street.
Howdy, what's up? Thanks for joining me. So my name's Xavier, or please call me Zav for short. And so this time we're talking about the 1998 movie 6 Days, 7 Nights, starring Harrison Ford and Anne Heche. And so this is a movie I loved at the time I saw it. I watched it at the cinema 27 years ago. And I think it's kind of underrated, or it went under the radar. It's kind of a forgotten movie. I mean, some people love the movie, and so it's not forgotten by everyone. But it surprises me that this movie is not talked about more, you know, especially because Harrison Ford, superstar, living legend, you know, Han Solo, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Deckard, Blade Runner, you know, one of the living legend. And to me, this was his last great adventure movie. And I am a big fan of Harrison Ford, which maybe it sounds a bit harsh because, you know, a bit disappointed with the last two Indiana Jones movies. So we had the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in 2008, and then we had Dial of Destiny 3 years ago, was it? 2022, I think it came out. Oh no, it's 2023. Anyway, maybe I'm alone in this front, but I kind of consider 6 Days, 7 Nights as like an unofficial Indiana Jones movie. You know, it's like Sean Connery has his unofficial James Bond movie. I mean, unofficial in that it wasn't made by the same studio that made all the other James Bond movies. Never Say Never Again, which came out 1983, was it? The same year as Octopussy, when I think that was Roger Moore's last movie as James Bond, or second last movie. Anyway, so yeah, maybe I'm a bit strange, but I kind of consider this like a unofficial Indiana Jones movie. Let me explain. You know, in Indiana Jones, there's this running joke that he can fly a plane, but he can't land a plane. And so in 6 Days, 7 Nights, basically, I won't go through the full plot, but, well, people have seen the movie, you know. So he's a pilot living in this South Pacific island somewhere near Tahiti. They actually filmed in Hawaii, in Kauai. But anyway, so he's this pilot who charters wealthy people to this beautiful resort in this exotic location. And he crash lands. You know, even though he's an experienced pilot, he crash lands. And so in Indiana Jones, he can't land a plane. And Harrison Ford actually, you know, has a pilot's license, and he did all his own flying in this movie. Apparently there was a lot of back and forth with the insurance company. He had to go through various accreditations for the movie, the people producing the movie, to let him fly the plane in the movie. And Harrison Ford famously crashed a plane 10 years ago, 2015. I remember, you know, we thought we lost him, and I saw the headline when it came out. I guess I just looked on BBC News or something, and Harrison Ford's been involved in a serious plane crash, and it was some golf course in Beverly Hills or Los Angeles somewhere. And, you know, it took him a long time to recover. I think it was like a year of rehabilitation, everything. I mean, it was mostly broken bones and whatnot, so... and then his co-star in this movie, Anne Heche, tragically died in a car accident 3 years ago. So Harrison Ford extremely lucky to survive his plane crash, and Anne Heche unlucky to not survive her car crash 3 years ago. And I remember when that story came out, that was also shocking because even though Anne Heche, she's not really a household name, but when this movie came out, she was kind of a big deal, and she'd been in a few big movies around that time. Volcano was another one. I Know What You Did Last Summer. Was she in that one? Anyway, around 1997, 1998, she was in a bunch of movies. I'll go through her filmography a bit later. But yeah, so I'd always been a fan of Anne Heche because I remember loving this movie. And, there was a lot of stuff about her coming out as a lesbian, or she didn't officially come out as lesbian. She came out as Ellen DeGeneres' girlfriend. And at the time, it got her a lot of publicity, but it actually seemed to hurt her career because the word is that the studios were trying to build her up as the next Meg Ryan, and she was set to have a long career in, love comedies and dramas. But yeah, her career kind of peaked and fell off very quickly in that 2 or 3 year span. And so I guess she had a lifelong struggle with mental instability. I don't know what she had, depression or manic depressive, what's the bipolar disorder. So it seems she was on one of those downers a few years ago when she had the car crash. And I mean, if you see how fast she was driving, it's actually lucky she didn't kill anybody else because it was very reckless how she was driving. But fortunately, nobody else died. And the thing is, with that accident, my immediate reaction was that I think many people who are, fans or concerned about Anne Heche, we thought she'd survived because they showed, I think it's Entertainment Tonight or on the news, they showed her being pulled out of this, car crash, smashed in the front of a house. She's pulled out and you can see her, moving. Was she walking? I mean, it seemed like physically she was okay as she's being put into the ambulance. And then a few hours later, it was announced that she died. So very, very sad. But yeah, I mean, when I heard about Harrison Ford's plane crash 10 years ago, I just assumed he was dead because I saw a photo of it crashing on the golf course, and I thought, there's no way someone's going to survive that. Or if he survives, he'll be paraplegic at best or something. But he's still with us, and he's still making movies. And he did an Indiana Jones movie a couple of years ago, and a Blade Runner sequel a few years. The Blade Runner sequel, 2049, with Ryan Gosling, one of my favorite actors. So two of my favorite actors in that movie, Blade Runner 2049, that came out 2017. So that was only 2 years after his plane crash, and I guess they filmed it in 2016. So about 12 months. So he basically spent 12 months recovering from his plane crash, and then he filmed the Blade Runner 2049. Anyway, as usual, I'm getting off track. I just wanted to say that for me, this is, Harrison Ford's last great, like highly recommend, a movie that I'm happy to rewatch many times and introduce to friends, and I don't get tired of, and I think it's kind of magical and underrated, as I said. But as much as I wanted to love Kingdom of the Crystal Skull 2008 and Dial of Destiny a couple of years ago, those movies, probably I'll watch them again, but yeah, the bit of the magic was lost there. I think there are elements of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. If you took the best half of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and the best half of Dial of Destiny and you put them together, you'd probably have a great Indiana Jones movie. But there's just, I don't want to do a full movie review on those two movies, but for example, in Dial of Destiny, his goddaughter, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, she's a smart aleck, and she's very disrespectful towards him, and he's kind of angry, somewhat incompetent, feeble old man, this jaded old, get off my lawn kind of like Clint Eastwood in Gran Torino vibe about him, and it's very disappointing when you see your heroes playing their iconic roles, and they just look, jaded and there's a scene in Dial of Destiny where he's teaching his university class, and all the students are falling asleep, and realistic. I teach university classes, and definitely my students fall asleep too often, so I know that feeling. But come on, this is Indiana Jones. Like, have some respect for the legend. And so that was very disappointing about Dial of Destiny. Kingdom of Crystal Skull, you had Steven Spielberg directing, you had George Lucas on board, Karen Allen as Karen Ravenwood. And, I guess the problem with that movie, mainly they jumped the shark a few too many times. The special effects were all over the place. You had the Tarzan scene with Shia LaBeouf and the CGI monkeys. I think many people hated that. And Shia LaBeouf hated that. And, actually even Shia LaBeouf's comments about that movie kind of left a bad taste in the mouth, because, he said Spielberg dropped the ball there. And while that might be true, again, it was very disrespectful to Spielberg and Harrison Ford. I mean, fans of the movie, or critics, or amateur commentators, YouTubers, whatever, we can say that, but you don't want to hear a co-star, as Shia LaBeouf was, saying that about a movie he's in. If he hates the movie, so that's part of the bad taste in the mouth about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. But there were elements of that movie I loved. The scenes at the university were filmed beautifully, and a lot of the adventure, in the Amazon, in Peru. For me, this is the unofficial fourth Indiana Jones movie. It's kind of like a combination of Indiana Jones meets Romancing the Stone. And Romancing the Stone came out in 1984, the same year as Temple of Doom, and those are my two favorite adventure movies, favorite adventure jungle movies of all time. So, and I think, not just my opinion, many people would say Temple of Doom and Romancing the Stone were two of the best adventure movies ever made. And so why is it a bit like Romancing the Stone? Romancing the Stone, you've got Michael Douglas's character, and he kind of reluctantly rescues Kathleen Turner's character from the jungle, from Colombia, and he's kind of a scoundrel. And Harrison Ford, a little bit of a scoundrel. In 6 Days, 7 Nights, he's this middle-aged. I mean, I think he plays a 50-year-old, but he was actually 56-year-old when they filmed it. Still looked great. He's got his shirt off in several scenes, and you can see he's very muscular and fit. And when he's running and going through the river and jumping off cliffs and all that stuff, I mean, maybe they use stunt doubles, but he looks and moves. He's still like not a young man, but he's believable as an action hero in this movie. Whereas in the last couple of Indiana Jones movies, especially Dial of Destiny, you really feel that he is an old man. So, a bit like Romancing the Stone, in that Michael Douglas was a scoundrel, Harrison Ford a bit of a scoundrel, and both of them reluctantly, rescue women for the right amount of money. So I think in this movie, Anne Heche, she needs to get back to Tahiti to do something. She's like working for a magazine, a women's magazine, and she suddenly has to, even though she's just been proposed to by David Schwimmer's character, and he's basically playing Ross from Friends. So this came out in 1998, which was the height of the hype around Friends. I mean, Friends was the most popular TV show in the world at that time, I think, and still now, it's probably the most popular sitcom ever. I preferred Seinfeld, so occasionally I'd watch Friends, come home from school, and if it was on TV, I'd watch 10 minutes here or there. But Seinfeld, during that time, a lot of people, you're either a fan of Seinfeld or a fan of Friends, and I was definitely in the Seinfeld camp. But these days, I've warmed up to Friends more. I mean, I never hated Friends, but it was just like the problem with Friends was you had 6 very good-looking people, 3 men, 3 women, and they all kind of looked like models, or they were all kind of too perfect. Whereas Seinfeld, this oddball, 3 men and a lady, and Kramer's completely zany in the clothes, and George is this short, balding, neurotic kind of Woody Allen type of character. And Seinfeld, he's a terrible actor. Seinfeld can't act. He's always laughing at his own jokes, and he's a stand-up comedian playing a stand-up comedian. So Seinfeld, and just so many memorable lines, like the soup Nazi, you're a very, very bad man, and so many quotable lines from Seinfeld, where I can't think of quotable lines from Friends, but there are so many fans of Friends out there, so sorry to besmirch them. And I've kind of changed my opinion in recent years. I guess during the lockdowns with COVID a few years back, people were watching a lot of these old sitcoms, and so I have a new appreciation. The fact that they filmed in front of a live studio audience, and I think probably I underrated how talented the cast of Friends were in terms of their ability to ad-lib, and just so they weren't just good-looking people. Of course, I always liked Matthew Perry, rest in peace. Sadly, I think he was the funniest one, and he passed away a couple of years ago from, was it overdose? And then Lisa Kudrow, she would be my second favorite. Those were the 2 naturally funny people, I thought. And David Schwimmer was, very, as Ross, was very annoying. But again, I've kind of, in retrospect, I've changed my mind on that. So I like the fact that David Schwimmer's in this movie, and that he's basically playing Ross again. And, Harrison Ford, I think, is kind of playing himself. I don't know how much of the movie was ad-libbed, but it feels like, he's very passionate about this movie. I mean, I don't know that for a fact, but it seemed like he was very energetic, and I've heard other reviewers talk about how it seemed that he was enjoying himself. And that's another reason why this movie's a standout is, it looks like Harrison Ford is having fun. So you always want to see your heroes enjoying themselves. And, of course, the fact that he could fly a plane in the movie, and that's his main hobby. And probably filming in Hawaii, where he has many fond memories. I think I talked about in another movie review the fact that Harrison Ford was very lucky to get the role of Indiana Jones, and they filmed the opening scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark was filmed in Kauai, and most of 6 Days, 7 Nights was filmed in Kauai. But it was very fortunate for Harrison Ford, because initially Tom Selleck was cast, but he couldn't do it because the producers of Magnum PI wouldn't let him out of his contract, even though there was a writer's strike, even though it was in Hawaii. And actually it turns out Tom Selleck could have done both, because there was a 6-month window where he wasn't working, and he was I guess in Hawaii, where they filmed that movie, where they filmed 6 Days, 7 Nights. So, sorry, all over the place, but this is the way my scatterbrain works. And, so Harrison Ford, he looks like he's having fun in this movie. Anne Heche, she looks like she's having a ball. 2 very charismatic leads. They have great chemistry together. This movie was... it made plenty of money, but it didn't do very well with the critics. It made a good amount of money. It wasn't like a monster hit. Let's see. It made $164 million. And, 164 million in 1998 money, that's a lot more than today. So, I don't know, that's more like, in today's money, that would be over 300 million, I guess. And a budget of 65 to 70 million. That's quite a significant budget there, especially for that time. But I'm thinking about, recent adventure movies, set in jungle, adventure romance movies. The most obvious one that comes to mind was The Lost City, which came out in 2022. That starred Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum. It's also got Daniel Radcliffe and Brad Pitt in it. But The Lost City, so basically Sandra Bullock, she was a producer on that movie, and I think she talked about she wanted to remake a movie like Romancing the Stone. And so, yeah, Romancing the Stone, 6 Days, 7 Nights, The Lost City, they're all same genre, jungle adventure, romance kind of story. But, to my thinking, this movie is also kind of half Indiana Jones. To me, it's like after Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, I mean, famously, Spielberg, I'm not sure about George Lucas, but I think Spielberg definitely wanted to end the Indiana Jones franchise on The Last Crusade, 1989, and a lot of people think that they should have quit while they were ahead, and probably they should have. I realize, I'm a bit of a hypocrite because I want to see Jim Carrey make another Ace Ventura movie, and time's running out on that because he made Ace Ventura: Pet Detective in 1994 and When Nature Calls in 1995. So the last Ace Ventura movie was 30 years ago, and Jim Carrey's getting quite old, but still I would love to see him reprise his role. But maybe he's reluctant to because he doesn't want to ruin the legacy or, quit while you're ahead kind of thing. But as I said, I don't totally hate the fact that Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and Dial of Destiny exist. And, maybe if I took the best half of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and the best half of Dial of Destiny, there's a movie that I could, almost love. So, yeah, mixed feelings about that. Obviously, if you love something too much, your expectations are too high, and so it's easier to get disappointed. But yeah, I should stop talking about Indiana Jones because I'm talking about 6 Days, 7 Nights here. Back to The Lost City. The reason I want to mention that again briefly is because this movie was rated 79% by critics, and I watched that movie. It was okay, it was fun time, I guess. So it came out 3 years ago, but instantly forgettable. I mean, there was maybe a couple of scenes with Brad Pitt. He has a minor role, just like a cameo. I think those are the only scenes that I can remember. And, I like Sandra Bullock. She's great in Miss Congeniality, and she's been in a bunch of good movies. And Channing Tatum, I like him. He was especially in 21, 22 Jump Street. Love those movies. But for some reason, I just, I don't know if I'll ever watch The Lost City again. I mean, maybe if it's on in the background when I'm at a hotel or on an airplane or something. But I have no, real affinity for that movie. And yet, if you look at the synopsis, you look at the plot and on paper, and if you look at the critics' score and you look at how it was reviewed, supposedly this is a much better movie than 6 Days, 7 Nights. I mean, yes, it was rated 79% by critics, whereas 6 Days, 7 Nights are only 40%. And yeah, 40%, no way. It's definitely an underrated movie. I wish more people would watch this movie. And, the reason I think it went under the radar also, it seems like a kind of somewhat forgotten movie, is if you look for reviews and reaction videos on YouTube, I think there's only one reaction video. I mean, maybe in the next year, maybe people will make a bunch of them, but at the time of filming this, I could only find one reaction video talking about 6 Days, 7 Nights. And then movie reviews, I could only find 3 maybe. So there aren't many videos on YouTube talking about this movie. But I do love the fact that Margot Robbie from Australia, I mentioned that, I'm from Australia originally, but I live in Japan now. I love the fact that she loves this movie. So if you saw in my intro, I had a little clip from the Graham Norton Show, and you've got Harrison Ford, and you've got Ryan Gosling. They were promoting Blade Runner 2049. I do really like that movie. I don't quite love Blade Runner 2049, even though it's starring, my favorite old actor and favorite, current generation actor. I mean, Harrison Ford is in his 80s now, mid-80s, I think, 83 or something, and Ryan Gosling is 41, 42 or something. So, two of my favorite actors from different generations, but it was directed by Denis Villeneuve, and people love the new Dune movies. I haven't watched them. Doesn't really interest me. I'm more interested in the old Dune movie from the 1980s. Just something about the Dune. I mean, I watched the trailers and I listened to reviews about the new Dune movies. But so Denis Villeneuve directing Blade Runner 2049 was somewhat disappointing to me. He's not a bad director, and he did a good job. But I really wish Ridley Scott had done that. Even though Ridley Scott has been hit and miss with his recent movies. I mean, I think he did Gladiator 2 last year, and even though Gladiator 2 was basically like a carbon copy repeat of the original, minus Russell Crowe, of course, because Maximus died in the first movie, can't bring him back. But I thought Gladiator 2 was pretty good. I mean, I understand that the valid criticism, that it was basically a carbon copy of the original almost. And Ridley Scott is, getting on. He's in his 80s now. And I guess the last movie that Ridley Scott made that people loved was The Martian. Came out 2015, 10 years ago. And that was like his last, mega hit movie. Critics and box office-wise, The Martian with Matt Damon. But I don't know exactly why Ridley Scott didn't direct Blade Runner 2049. I mean, I think he should have, and if he had, he would have continued his vision. I guess maybe he didn't hold the rights to the movie, so the production company, they were kind of impatient to get it done, and Ridley Scott, making even though he's in his 80s now, he was, churning out 1 or 2 movies a year and very, very busy, so maybe some scheduling conflict or something. He is a producer. I'm not sure if he's executive producer, but he was involved in Blade Runner 2049. But I really wish Ridley Scott had directed that movie, because one of my major disappointments with Blade Runner 2049 is that it's just way too slow, and I think Ridley would have sped it up, and visually it's too bleak, even though the original Blade Runner 1982 was very bleak as well. It had the cyberpunk vibe that he created, basically create a whole genre of, copycats, and, the architecture and the clothes and everything. And so, even the way, Harrison Ford and Sean Young are dressed in the original Blade Runner, and then you cut to the 2049 and he's, in his t-shirt, like in his pajamas or whatever. And the Blade Runner 2049, it was just, some of the scenes were, really sleep-inducing, especially like the scene where Ryan Gosling, Kay, goes to try and find this memory of this toy horse that he put in this, slavery factory thing, orphanage where he lived. And that scene goes on forever. And visually, it's very boring. I mean, there are some visually stunning scenes in Blade Runner 2049, like especially the Las Vegas scenes, in the abandoned casino. That was beautiful. Ridley Scott is renowned for his amazing, visual design, and that's how he started. Before he was doing movies, before he did Alien, before he did Blade Runner, he was doing, TV commercials, and so he's always had that kind of artistic visual vision. And I think, my opinion, Denis Villeneuve, he just doesn't have it. Or anyway, it's not my taste. So some people much prefer Blade Runner 2049 than the original. Me, no. Even though starring 2 of my favorite actors of all time. So there was this interview on 2017 when Harrison Ford and Ryan Gosling were promoting Blade Runner 2049, where you had Reese Witherspoon and Margot Robbie, and I forgot what movie Margot Robbie was. Maybe it was I, Tonya. That was a very good movie, you know, about Tonya Harding, the figure skater whose boyfriend's friend, thug, you know, beat up her rival. Anyway, and, you know, of course, everyone knows Margot Robbie from Suicide Squad, Harley Quinn, and more recently from Barbie, which was a mega hit 2 years ago, one of the very few mega hit movies. I mean, especially comedy. I think Barbie counts as a comedy. That movie made, I think, 1.3 billion, so that was amazing, mega hit. And Barbie, of course, co-starring Ryan Gosling. So there's the connection. So in 2017, you're on Graham Norton's show. Graeme Norton, he's very, very great talk show host. He's great, different from American talk show hosts. You know, American talk show hosts, they're generally good one-on-one. I mean, these days I don't watch late night talk shows because I'm not a fan of the current batch. The last talk show host that I really enjoyed was Conan O'Brien, and he does a podcast, but he doesn't have his show anymore. And Letterman, I was a huge fan of Letterman, but he's retired. And of course, everyone loves Johnny Carson, before my time, but I've seen the clips, so we know how great he was. Even Jay Leno, you know, of course, famously, Letterman and Jay Leno didn't get on, but Jay Leno, I'd still say, was better than the current crop of talk show hosts. But Craig Ferguson. Craig Ferguson was a very special talk show host. I mean, he's still alive, but his show ended, 10 years ago, I think it was. And Craig Ferguson was the best at flirting. So if you like seeing clips of charismatic talk show hosts flirt with beautiful, sexy, you know, attractive, humorous women, check out Craig Ferguson clips on YouTube. But Graeme Norton, he's great because what he does that's special is he'll have a bunch of actors and actresses or other entertainers, singers, and, you know, maybe sometimes British, sometimes American, Australian, whoever, and they'll be on the couch, and you see this. He's just very good at kind of managing, you know, this awkward group dynamics. And so in this interview from 8 years ago, you know, Harrison Ford's there, and Harrison Ford is kind of known to be an awkward interviewer. He's he's not the fastest talker. You know, he's got a very dry sense of humor, and, you know, I think Harrison Ford, if he's comfortable and if he's, you know, on good terms with the host, they can have some incredible banter, such as with Conan O'Brien. There's many incredible skits with Harrison Ford and Conan O'Brien. You know, like when he was talking about coming back to Star Wars, and, you know, there's this skit with him and Chewbacca, is it? And then there's another skit where someone comes in with a Lego Millennium Falcon, and Harrison Ford pretends to you know, lose his shit and smashes it up, and it might have been staged, who knows? But Harrison Ford, he's kind of hit and miss when it comes to talk shows because of his he's probably too honest. You know, he's the different from Tom Hanks. Like, Tom Hanks is known to be, you know, Mr. Nice Guy. Every interview, he's always charming. He can always turn it on, and he's always got jokes, and he's always got anecdotes. But Harrison Ford's not like that. Harrison Ford, you know, he's just very real. Like, he is somewhat grumpy. You know, he's into his airplanes. He's kind of honest that he makes some movies just for money. Like, I guess the Captain America movie that came out, this year came out, that was, people didn't like that movie. I mean, I'm not into the Marvel movies at all. I was a bit disappointed that Harrison Ford did that movie, just because I kind of wish he would stay away from Marvel. But, you know, I think if you asked him, why did you do that movie, he'd say, you know, show me the money. They probably gave him $20 million or $30 million, who knows. And for the same reason that he came back to the Star Wars movies, you know, like The Force Awakens, he agreed to come back as long as they killed him, and that was kind of disappointing. But he always said that he loved Indiana Jones and he wanted to come back. And the thing that stopped them making Indiana Jones movies for many years was Steven Spielberg didn't want to do them. And so that's why there was such a huge gap between the last two Indiana Jones movies. So yeah, Harrison Ford, if he's not enthusiastic, if he's not feeling the vibe, if he's, feels the pressure to be too charming and fake, then sometimes interviews can go off the rails. But if he's friendly with someone, as he is with Conan O'Brien, as he seems to be with Graeme Norton, and I think last 10 years maybe he's mellowed a bit. Like I think he probably since that plane accident, the plane accident was 10 years ago, he just appreciates being alive. I think that probably gave him a new lease on life in terms of he's been somewhat less jaded. And so anyway, it's good to see that he's still got a bit of a spring in his step, but not in Dial of Destiny. And part of the reason was how his character was written. He's supposed to be this grumpy old get off my lawn guy, and that was part of the disappointment. You don't want to see him so unenthused. And his character in 6 Days, 7 Nights, what's the character's name? So he's called Quinn Harris. So, in this movie, he's a bit of a bum, a beach bum. He gets drunk. He's trying to chat up women at the bar, at the resort, and he just likes flying his plane. And he's got a friends with benefits relationship going on with Angelica, played by Jacqueline Obradors. I'd never seen her in anything else, but looked up her filmography. She has been in a bunch of things, including Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo. That was kind of bonkers comedy. She was actually in a movie I watched a couple of years ago. What was that called? Palm Springs. I'm only looking at her filmography now, so I can see that. But I totally don't recall seeing her. I guess she was a minor character in that, and maybe she looks quite different now. But so she was memorable. Basically, there are 4 characters in this movie that are memorable. Harrison Ford and Heche David Schwimmer and Jacqueline Obradors. Those are the 4, but it's really Harrison Ford and Heche's movie. So David Schwimmer and Jacqueline Obradors, they're like secondary characters, but those are the only 4 kind of people you would remember from the movie. Talking about this Graeme Norton clip. So, Graeme Norton, he's incredible at creating fun conversations and, awkward but fun, humorous moments and surprising moments. He's great at segues. And so he says, actually, Margot Robbie, she's a big fan of yours, Harrison. And Harrison kind of looks embarrassed. Major compliment to, if who wouldn't blush if someone said Margot Robbie's a big fan of yours and you're sitting right there. And then they pan to Margot Robbie, and you can tell that it's genuine. She looks kind of like a giggly fan, and then she says, of course, I love you in Indiana Jones, everybody, so it's no secret. Who hates Indiana Jones? Everybody loves Indiana Jones, one of the most iconic characters in cinema history. But then she says, actually, my favorite movie of yours, to his face, is 6 Days, 7 Nights. And, Harrison Ford looks genuinely surprised because I guess people don't mention it. People always talk about Star Wars, Han Solo. They always talk about Indiana Jones, Blade Runner, and even The Fugitive and other great movies he's been involved in. But for some reason, 6 Days, 7 Nights, it's not on people's radar. And as I said, why have I got this opinion? Because if you look on YouTube, there's only 3, maybe 4 reviews of the movie, only 1 reaction video. But now you have one of the biggest actresses in the world, especially after Barbie. I mean, Margot Robbie's been on hiatus the last 2 years. I think she had a baby. So hopefully she comes back and makes more great movies. And she's had an incredible run ever since she was in The Wolf of Wall Street with Leonardo DiCaprio, Scorsese movie. And so it's been fun to see her rise. But how cool is that to have that moment on Graham Norton Show? And I know a lot of Harrison Ford fans have seen that clip because it's just kind of, you see how pleasantly surprised Harrison Ford is. And it's cool that Margot Robbie is a big Harrison Ford fan. And in regards to this movie review, it's awesome that it's her favorite movie. I mean, I would have thought the fact that that clip is, quite popular and other people have mentioned it, you would think that would get people talking about this movie more. But for some reason, it still hasn't regathered momentum. Alrighty then. So before I go into the plot and other aspects of the movie, I think I might forget this later, so I'll mention now. Part of the reason I love this movie is, I think, like if you listen to people talk nostalgically about movies they love, it's usually, like the time and the place when you first saw the movie. So, my favorite movie of all time, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I saw that in 1985 when I was like 7 years old. I was probably too young to watch that movie. Even Spielberg said that movie was too dark, and both Spielberg and George Lucas, they are just going through divorces, and have the scene where they're ripping out the heart. It's very over the top. But that movie, probably the movie that got me interested in Asia. So now I live in Japan. I lived in China for 3 years, and always traveling around Asia. This summer I was in Taiwan, and so looking back, what made me a Harrison Ford fan, and what made me an adventure fan, and what gave me the travel bug, this travel lust to get out of Australia, it all began with Temple of Doom, because that movie starts in Shanghai. They actually filmed in Macau. I've been to Shanghai, I've been to Macau, but and then it goes to India, but actually they filmed in Sri Lanka because the Indian government was kind of offended with the storyline, and I've been to Sri Lanka and I've seen some of the locations where they filmed Temple of Doom. But I saw that movie as a kid, and just, the scene where you go from Club Obi-Wan, of course, George Lucas, clever, quirky, fun reference to Obi-Wan Kenobi, Club Obi-Wan in Shanghai. And, they go from this crazy scene, falling off the balcony, multiple layers of these, kind of window shelter tent things, like a Jackie Chan kind of movie. And then they fall into this, old Bentley or some kind of classic sports car from the 1920s, 1930s, and short round drive in the car. And then they speed off to the cargo plane. And, in the cargo plane, they've got the chickens, the poultry. And then suddenly, it's dawn, and they're flying over the Himalayas, and they crash. There's no parachute, and then they jump out of the plane with a inflatable raft. Totally, absurd, but yet somehow believable. I mean, much more believable than a lot of the current, CGI fest adventure movies like Jungle Cruise or Uncharted. These like Uncharted a couple of years ago, they're flying out of this cave with these pirate ships, carrying them out of the cave, these massive pirates. I mean, totally, jumping the shark. So people say, Temple of Doom jumped the shark when you had these inflatable rafts, as a pseudo parachute. But, maybe it could work. I mean, it depends how far you are. And, they land on snow, so soft landing. But that scene, that sequence of events from Shanghai to then going off the cliff into India, actually Sri Lanka, that was the most exciting thing I'd ever seen, and that made me Indiana Jones fan, made me a Harrison Ford fan. So cut to 1998, which was 14 years later, or 13 years after I'd seen the movie. So I'm in university, second year. I was 20 years old, and I guess I was kind of a late bloomer. So 20 years old, I mean, even though I wanted to travel many places, for one reason or another, I mean, my family wasn't into travel, and we never, my parents never been abroad. My dad went to America once for business, but my mother's still never been abroad. And, subsequently my sister's done a lot of travel. But anyway, growing up, my parents were not interested in travel. And, I didn't have much money. So finally, second year of university, I got just enough money to travel to Cairns. So this is, domestic tourism. I'd still never been abroad. And I took a trip to Cairns, which is like it's like the Hawaii of Australia. I mean, not quite Hawaii, because Hawaii's an island. Cairns, it's, could be maybe like the Everglades or Cairns is its own thing. So most famous for the Great Barrier Reef. So if you're into snorkeling, diving, people go there to see the tropical fish. And, Steve Irwin, Australian legend, famously, tragically died, not at the Great Barrier Reef. I think it was slightly south of there. I think it was the Sunshine, the Whitsundays. Anyway, he died near there, stingray attack, straight through the heart. So Australia's most, famous conservation guy, legend of Animal Planet, Steve Irwin. And crazy that it wasn't a crocodile that killed him, much more dangerous animal. Crazy that it was actually a stingray. And, you can count on one hand the amount of people that have died from stingray attacks, I think. So that was a freak accident. But Cairns is the gateway to the Great Barrier Reef. It's the gateway to the Daintree Rainforest. And, I'm more of a jungle guy. That's, I love jungle adventure movies. So for that reason, one of the reasons I love 6 Days, 7 Nights, one of the reasons I love Temple of Doom, the jungle scenes, you can see I've got some plants behind me, jungle all the way. And Cairns, you've got the Daintree Rainforest and some amazing animals there. Of course, you've got saltwater crocodiles in the Daintree River, but you've also got cassowaries, and cassowaries are like living dinosaurs. Talked about dinosaurs in my first movie review for a Jurassic World Rebirth. Also a jungle movie, just came out recently. I watched that at the cinema twice. And so, to me, like the Daintree Rainforest, this is like a real Jurassic Park. You've got lace-monitored lizards. I think they're the third biggest lizard in the world after the Komodo dragon and the Asian water monitor. And you've got tree kangaroos, you've got fruit bats, all these amazing animals, palm cockatoos. So finally I took a trip, I went with a friend, and so I'd saved some money. This is my first kind of big adventure. It wasn't a solo adventure because I went with a friend, but first travel without my family, age 20. And just at that time, 6 Days, 7 Nights came out, so I went snorkeling on the Great Barrier Reef, then I went rafting on the Tully River, whitewater rafting, and took a jeep through the Daintree Rainforest. So I was having my first kind of real adventure. And at the same time, during the stay in Cairns, I went to the cinema there. This is, 27 years ago. Cairns is much bigger now because of all the tourism, and I'm not going to look up the stats and bore you with the Wikipedia information, but now I think Cairns, it's still, a smallish city, but much more developed, much more decked out for tourists. We've got shopping centres and the train stations, much more modern now. So I don't know how many cinemas they had in Cairns back then, maybe only one, and it was, fairly small cinema. They probably have bigger cinemas there now. So it was just kind of fortunate timing. I'm having this kind of adventure, jungle adventure, rainforest, beautiful Great Barrier Reef. And on in between days, in between going to the Great Barrier Reef and going to the Daintree Rainforest, went to the cinema with my friend, persuade him to go watch it with me. I mean, he liked Indiana Jones too, so it wasn't hard to persuade him. Unlike the previous movie review I mentioned, Ace Ventura, where I stupidly didn't go to the cinema because I thought it was too cartoonish, but my friend later encouraged me to go see The Mask with him, a different friend. That was a few years earlier when I was in high school. So it's fun to persuade people. I mean, I got my wife to go see Jurassic World Rebirth with me. She didn't want to watch it, but that was last week, and she had a great time. I think she liked it even more than I did. So this is part of the joy of watching movies, especially watching movies on the big screen at the cinema. Cinema, it's magical because you're in a room with strangers, and this is why I really hope cinema doesn't die. Part of the reason I'm doing this review is to encourage other people to watch this movie because, as I keep saying, I think it's underrated, went under the radar, and for some reason it's a movie that's not talked about. I think hardcore Harrison Ford fans, they know it. Hardcore Anne Heche fans, they know the movie. But otherwise, a lot of people have never heard of it. Margot Robbie's heard of it. She loves it. Her favorite Harrison Ford movie. I watched 6 Days, 7 Nights at the cinema in Cairns, very small cinema, with my friend, and it was just, it was amazing. It was, it's like, it's very rare that a movie lives up to your expectations if you have high expectations. So, part of the reason I enjoyed Jurassic World Rebirth was because I went in with low expectations. And, I'd heard the bad reviews and a lot of people have been dumping on that movie, I think unfairly. I would consider that the second best Jurassic movie after the original. But I'm sure part of the reason I enjoyed it so much was because I heard so many people trashing the movie and I went in with very low expectations. But with 6 Days, 7 Nights, I went in with high expectations. For me, this kind of felt like, even then, even before I'd seen the movie, I was anticipating this as the fourth Indiana Jones movie because at that time we assumed Indiana Jones was finished. Spielberg said it was finished. You have that scene, they're riding off into the sunset with his dad, Sean Connery, and, his two other mates, good mates. And so in 1998, 9 years after the last Indiana Jones movie, it seemed like we were never going to get that again. And for many years, it seemed like we were never going to get a great adventure movie from Harrison Ford again. I mean, he'd been in some other action movies, The Fugitive, great action movie. I guess you could count that as adventure, but, not a classic adventure, more of a thriller movie. And then you had Air Force One, where, that was a monster hit for him. That came out just 1 year before 6 Days, 7 Nights. But in Air Force One, he plays the kick-ass president and, kind of unbelievable. But at the time, people had more respect for politicians or presidents. So that went down well and that was a big hit. But again, not a classic adventure story. You have this president who's, fighting off the baddies on the Air Force One. Who was the villain in that movie? Of course, Gary Oldman. Gary Oldman, one of the great actors and a great villain in so many movies. So Harrison Ford had starred in a bunch of serious movies, Presumed Innocent, Regarding Henry, Patriot Games, Clear and Present Danger, Sabrina, The Devil's Own. So a couple of those were Tom Clancy, kind of thrillers, spy thrillers, Patriot Games, Clear and Present Danger. And, I don't know if other people felt this way, but I was kind of thinking that, Harrison Ford, he's over that genre. He's not going to go back to adventure movies. He's not going to go back to the jungle. But he did. So going into it, I thought this is going to be like another Indiana Jones movie. And even though it's a different character, I mean, it could be like almost like a retired Indiana Jones character. Of course, Indiana Jones set in the 1940s, 1950s. The most recent one in the 1960s, was it? But yeah, so different era because 6 Days, 7 Nights was set in the 90s, but you know, era problems set aside. The way his enthusiasm, his acting, the setting, the link with the planes, the link with filming locations in Hawaii for Raiders of the Lost Ark and 6 Days, 7 Nights, this was like another Indiana Jones movie. So there was a bit of controversy going into the movie. I think it came, was it just around, maybe it was a few months before the movie was released. So Anne Heche was, photographed hand in hand with Ellen DeGeneres, and now looking back, it's ridiculous. But so there was all this rumor, oh, she's a lesbian, and who cares? Like, especially now, who cares? And I guess it shows you how far progressivism has come. I mean, it's good that gays, lesbians, LGBT feel free to be themselves these days. Like, for example, Jonathan Bailey, he's one of the co-stars in the new Jurassic World Rebirth movie, and apparently he's famously come out as a gay in reality, and nobody cares. So that's good. But people did care. I mean, I don't know how many normal people cared, but the studios cared, because studios always care about making money. So they were basically pushing Anne Heche as the next, Meg Ryan, and so she was in a lot of kind of big budget movies and romantic movies in 1997, 1998, and this movie kind of ended that. And actually, I think they were even trying to recast her. Oh, when did that come out? I think the hoopla around Anne Heche, I think that was 1997. So I think they'd already filmed the movie, but yeah, I don't think they were going to refilm it. But there was, crazy talks in the media, Entertainment Tonight. I mean, nowadays it would be TMZ. I don't think TMZ existed back in 1998. Maybe it did, but I recall Entertainment Tonight and some other news shows, they were making this big deal about Anne Heche. I mean, I guess she was bisexual. And I think if she was interviewed, she wouldn't even talk about her sexuality. But she'd been with men, she'd dated men. Oh, apparently Steve Martin, who dated Anne Heche in the early 90s, I think, he based his character in Bowfinger, 1999 movie, based the Heather Graham character was inspired by Steve Martin's relationship with Anne Heche. It's because, apparently, so I guess she was dating Steve Martin just before Ellen DeGeneres, or maybe there was some gap between there. But Steve Martin was surprised that she was into him, and then suddenly she was into Ellen DeGeneres. And so in Bowfinger, it's a bonkers parody. I mean, I recommend Bowfinger, great movie, so many great actors. Eddie Murphy's in it, Steve Martin, great 1-2 combo, and you have Terrence Stamp. Terrence Stamp is playing like the cult leader in a parody of Scientology. I mean, clearly a parody of Scientology. And so he's playing like the L. Ron Hubbard character or David Miscavige character. So if you haven't seen Bowfinger, check it out. But anyway, getting back to Anne Heche, there was this big controversy at the time, and people were saying, oh, maybe she shouldn't be in the movie. And I think it was a couple of months before the movie was released, and Harrison Ford said she should absolutely be in the movie, and she was perfect. And Anne Heche really appreciated that Harrison stood up for her, and so they didn't recast. I mean, I don't know if the studio was ever seriously considering recasting. I mean, it would be crazy to think they would reshoot a $60-70 million movie, but I mean, it has happened before, It happened with it happened with a Ridley Scott movie, All the Money in the World, when Kevin Spacey was famously dropped from that a few years ago and replaced with Christopher Plummer. Nowadays with CGI but again that was a crazy one-off thing. So I don't really think they were ever seriously considering dropping Anne Heche from the movie. Maybe they were the studio was considering delaying the release, maybe until the hoopla blew over. And again, who cares? Lesbians go be a bit lesbian, bisexual be bisexual. Who really cares? What I'm saying is people did care. Maybe not regular people, but the studios cared. They cared because they're all about the money, and if they think a movie's gonna lose money, and back in the day, so many entertainers like Ricky Martin and George Michael didn't come out because they would lose money. So now we live in a different era now. As I said, Jonathan Bailey in the new Jurassic World Rebirth movie, he's come out and he's able to play a leading man, and he's able to have great chemistry with Scarlett Johansson, and it's believable. So that's good. It's good that actors can act and we don't care about their private lives, or at least their sexuality. Just going back to Anne Heche's, this was her moment. So it's great that she was so good in the movie, and that Harrison Ford, stood by her and said they had great chemistry, and they did have great chemistry. I think anyone watches the movie, you believe that these two could be a couple, even though there's a significant age gap. But Harrison Ford, so he was 56 at the time, but he looked great. He obviously staying fit. I remember seeing these pictures of him at the time playing tennis, shirtless. So I guess he was working out playing tennis. I'm a big fan of tennis, my favorite sport, and so I think tennis players are the fittest people around. I don't know if Harrison Ford still plays tennis, but look at Djokovic. He's 38 years old, and he just made the semi-finals of the US Open. This year he's made the semi-finals of all 4 majors again, the oldest man to do that. So big fan of Djokovic, big fan of Harrison Ford, big fan of tennis. And the age gap thing, it's kind of, they reference it in the movie. There's a scene where she's asking him his age, and he says, "Oh, guess how old I am?" And she says, "Oh, 40, and older, 45. And then I think they stop at 50, and she says, "Oh, you still look good." And he does still look good. So nobody really cared about the age gap. They have great chemistry. So talking about Anne Heche's, run. So the first movie I saw her in was The Juror, which came out in 1996, and that starred Demi Moore and Alec Baldwin. That was a great little thriller, and I think this is just when Anne Heche was gathering momentum. And then she was in 1997. She was in Donnie Brasco, Volcano. That was a big budget movie. I Know What You Did Last Summer. That was a monster hit with Jennifer Love Hewitt, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Ryan Philippe, and Freddie Prinze Jr., also Johnny Galecki. She was in Wag the Dog with Dustin Hoffman, Robert De Niro. And then 6 Days, 7 Nights, 1998, Return to Paradise with Vince Vaughn, Psycho also with Vince Vaughn. And basically, that was the end of her run. So she was in, from 1996 to 1998, that 2.5, 3 years, she was in 10 movies. And yeah, she never returned to that, that was her moment. And so you think, well, what happened? I can only think that, the studios, they decided, because she was with Ellen DeGeneres, I think they broke up in 2000, and because of that, they decided that, they couldn't sell her as a romantic lead which who knows, there might have been other behind. We know Hollywood's very dirty. You know, you've got to be friends with the right people. And, you know, it's a little bit ironic that Steve Martin wrote that character of Heather Graham in Bowfinger. In that movie, it's kind of suggested that Heather Graham, who's a parody of Anne Heche's character, I don't know why I know that. I think, did Steve Martin mention it somewhere? I think he probably did mention that he was dating Anne Heche, and that was the inspiration for the character. But anyway, so in Bowfinger, it's suggested that the parody of Anne Heche, Heather Graham, is suddenly a lesbian just to become popular, just to be, you know, go jump on the bandwagon and, you know, get with a popular Hollywood celebrity, Ellen DeGeneres, who, you know, was had her own comedy, had her own sitcom, and then later went on to have her own talk show. And Ellen DeGeneres, you know, 10 years ago, the most beloved female talk show host. You know, she hosted the Oscars and that famous selfie photo with, you know, Brad Pitt and Jennifer Lawrence and all those stars. But now, then a few years ago, we found out that she's not Mr. Nice Guy, Mr. Nice Lady. She's actually like, as Tim Dillon put it, she's there running Abu Ghraib in the background there. You know, she was torturing her staff, not literally, but, you know, apparently she wasn't the nice woman that she, you know, came across on camera. And a similar thing happened with James Gordon last year or 2 years ago. So, you know, famously, Ellen DeGeneres and James Gordon, their whole image, their whole shtick with their talk shows was that they're friendly with everyone and they can make a joke. And, you know, James Gordon, carpool karaoke. Ellen DeGeneres, you know, she'll talk about embarrassing stories and invite anyone on her show, and they always get personal. Justin Bieber, and, you know, some people did call her out, you know, on camera. It very rarely happened, but Dakota Johnson called her fakery out one time. That was cool. But again, I'm going off on a tangent as usual. I just can't help myself. Sorry. Yeah, it's ironic that Steve Martin was inspired to write that character, suggesting that Anne Heche only became a lesbian to, you know, increase her popularity or fame in Hollywood. And, you know, who knows why she hooked up with Ellen DeGeneres. It might be true, but the reality is, the irony is, it really hurt her career, because her moment came and went in that brief span. And so kind of sad about that. You know, all these actors that worked with her, Harrison Ford, Vince Vaughn, they've all spoke fondly of her. You know, I mean, studios, they will kill careers, and, you know, occasionally people get a second chance to have a renaissance. Matthew McConaughey. I mean, famous example of that is Brendan Fraser. You know, he's like a rare example of a male Me Too case where one of these, you know, I guess a gay famous producer in Hollywood, you know, sexually harassed or groped him, and I guess because he refused the advances, Brendan Fraser's career was, you know, killed in its tracks. And, you know, he was mega star with the Mummy movies and George of the Jungle, and yeah, for a long time, Brendan Fraser was persona non grata. I mean, I guess he was working, but nothing significant that people talked about. And then he had this big comeback. Did he win the Oscar? Was it last year or 2 years ago for The Whale? Aaron Aronofsky. I don't know if he won the Oscar or he was nominated, but anyway, that movie. No, I think he won. Yeah, he won the Oscar, and, you know, he's getting he's making a big comeback. He was he's going to be in a movie set in Japan. Is it Rent a Family? It's coming out. I'm very keen to see that one because, you know, I live in Japan, and, you know, the movie that kind of inspired me to visit Japan was Lost in Translation. Bill Murray, Scarlett Johansson, came out in 2003. I mean, maybe honestly, of course, the Karate Kid movies, I mean, the second movie, the sequel, was set in Okinawa, actually filmed in Hawaii. Hawaii is the go-to place to film for any tropical island or tropical adventure movie, whether it's Tropic Thunder or Jurassic Park movies, Jurassic World, or Jumanji, you name it. So many movies filmed there, including 6 Days, 7 Nights, and even the sequel to The Karate Kid, which was set in Okinawa. But so maybe the Karate Kid movies got me interested in Japan as a young kid, and maybe I've mentioned in another review I did, big fan of Michael Douglas. Harrison Ford, Michael Douglas, my two favorite actors of all time. More recently, Ryan Gosling. I mean, he's still youngish. I mean, he's early 40s and he's still making great movies. I enjoyed The Fall Guy last year. Not his best movie. His best movie, in my opinion, The Nice Guys, came out 2016. One of the best detective comedy stories you'll ever see. Up there with Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, which was the previous movie I reviewed. So if you haven't seen The Nice Guys 2016, check that one out. Ryan Gosling, he's great. But, so Michael Douglas was in Black Rain, Ridley Scott movie. And, Black Rain is kind of like a contemporary Blade Runner movie. So filmed in Osaka, Japan, 1989, at the peak of Japan's economic bubble. And you go back to the 1980s, there's a bunch of movies like that one, and Rising Sun with Sean Connery. Michael Keaton movie came out. And yes, there's a bunch of these movies that came out in the 80s and early 90s where it seemed that, America was really worried that Japan was going to overtake America economically. So even though America won the war going back to 1945, but then decades later you have the rising sun, about to overtake America. This was the fear. So what got me interested in Japan? The Karate Kid, Black Rain, Lost in Translation, and what I'm really looking forward to, this might be the best Hollywood movie made in Japan coming soon. I mean, I'm not sure if it's a Hollywood movie. It might be an independent movie. Coming out soon is Rent a Family with Brendan Fraser. So sometimes actors are given a second chance to come back, but that didn't really happen with Anne Heche, unfortunately. I mean, she was in several movies. She kept working, but nothing noteworthy. Also, you've got Alison Janney. She's in it. Great actress. Her role is relatively minor. And the connection with Romancing the Stone is that Anne Heche, the movie begins in New York in like a snowstorm, as does Romancing the Stone. And Romancing the Stone, Kathleen Turner's character is she's a fiction writer writing romance novels. And in 6 Days, 7 Nights, Anne Heche is writing for a women's magazine, and it's all about talking about how men can. It's talking about how women can attract men, and kind of women's gossip, that kind of thing. So there's a great scene early in the movie where they're flying off into the storm, and Harrison Ford Quinn is asking Anne Heche, so what do you do? And she says, I write for this magazine Dazzle, and he says he's never heard of it. And so he reads the cover, how to get a man and how to boost your butt, or some kind of exercise for no, it's not a Brazilian butt lift. I think that term didn't exist then, but something like that to make yourself more attractive. And then he says, how women can attract men, and she says, how? And he says, show up. Men are simple, just show up. That's all we want. And she sarcastically says, is this advice for free, or does that come with the $700? So she's paying him $700 to take her to Tahiti. Again, a link with Romancing the Stone. So in Romancing the Stone, I think it's $375 that Kathleen Turner's paying Michael Douglas to take her to Cartagena in Colombia. So there's the kind of scoundrel element that these guys, they're willing to kind of rescue women at a price. But, Harrison Ford, he plays a competent, great pilot, but because he's sort of too greedy for money, he's willing to fly off in this thunderstorm. And, she's worried before she gets on the plane. She says, "Are we going to be all right?" And he says, yeah, you can trust me. And even though it's an old plane, he's very confident in himself. But almost immediately they're, in the eye of the storm. And, as it's a bumpy ride, Anne Heche's character, she starts taking some kind of medicine, some kind of tranquilizers or whatever to get over the nervousness. And again, reminds me of Romancing the Stone, where Kathleen Turner, the famous scene where they go across the rope bridge and they Tarzan across, and she has these mini bottles of whiskey in her bag, and she starts drinking alcohol there, and then they let her get drunk in the abandoned cargo plane full of marijuana. Anyway, so a few other actors. You have Tamuera Morrison and Cliff Curtis, two famous New Zealand actors. They were both in Once Were Warriors, and Cliff Curtis was in Star Wars, was he? And Danny Trejo, you know him from Machete. Some people have criticized David Schwimmer's character. I thought he was great. I mean, many people criticized the movie. As I said, it's got a surprisingly low rating. So, favorite scenes. I mean, basically every scene where they're in the jungle. I love the scene. Most of it is, shot on location in Kauai, and incredible scenery. Is it the Nepali coast? It's so beautiful. It almost looks like it could be green screen, in that, you've got these red sand, sea cliffs rising up, hundreds of meters above the Pacific Ocean, and in the background you've got these green hills, and it's just completely surreal. And that's one of the reasons that they keep using Hawaii, and especially Kauai, for all these adventure movies, is because the background is just otherworldly, surreal. And so there's great scenes of them hiking along these cliffs, and they're rowing in a boat before they encounter the pirates. And I love, there's one scene which is obviously done in a studio jungle, and I much prefer they do like practical effects, like the classic movies, when they did the old Tarzan movies or jungle movies from the going back 50, 60, 70 years ago, those classic adventure movies, where if it was in the jungle, they'd generally film in a studio, and they'd have fake fig trees, fake palm trees. But they did it in Jurassic Park. There's a scene where they're sleeping under a tree, the sunset, and you can tell it's a fake, background, painted background, and probably a fake tree. I mean, it might be a real tree, but there's a similar scene to that where they're sleeping, and then he gets the idea. He sees this abandoned seaplane in the tree above. And Anne Heche makes some quip about this is like a bad island for planes, because every plane seems to crash here. And even though that was a fake jungle, I still love that scene. They have a kiss. There's no sex between. There is a sex scene, or it's not shown, but it's insinuated between David Schwimmer and Jacqueline Angelica. And why do they have that scene between David Schwimmer and Angelica, their characters? That's basically so you don't feel bad, I guess, about Harrison Ford and Heche kind of cheating I mean, Harrison Ford, doesn't really have a proper girlfriend. He's in a friends with benefit things. But and Heche's character, she's just been proposed to and agreed. She's agreed to marry David Schwimmer's character. So because they have this kind of romantic adventure, they don't have sex, but to make it more palpable, I guess, the fact that they feel less guilty about it. And it's written into the story. So at the end of the movie, when they finally get back to land, they have this encounter with the pirates, and they manage to rebuild the plane, and he gets shot, and there's this amazing scene where they're about to crash into the pirates, but the seaplane, the reconstructed seaplane with this old World War II seaplane on the bottom instead of the wheels, they manage to take off just in time, and you see it flying up vertically, and there's a cannon on the pirate ship, and they shoot up directly, and it's kind of like a Looney Tunes Roadrunner kind of scene, and it reminds me of a scene in Waterworld. I think there's a similar scene in Waterworld where they're firing a cannon off from the pirate ship vertically in the sky, and you see I think it's towards the end of Waterworld, also filmed in Hawaii. Actually, Waterworld would be maybe my favorite Kevin Costner movie. I like Tin Cup, along with, I used to like golf. That would be my favorite golfing movie. Tin Cup and Waterworld, my favorite Kevin Costner movies. And Waterworld, of course, that was talked about as the most expensive movie ever made. And, it was supposedly a disaster, a mega flop. But actually, because Waterworld came out, when did that come out? Late 1990s, was it? When that came out, DVD sales, VHS sales, DVD sales, that was still a thing. And that movie actually made money, so it wasn't a flop. Nowadays, you can't, if you don't make your money at the cinema, I guess Netflix and Amazon and Apple, they're making movies, and they have a totally different business model because they're all about subscribers. But talking about how movies used to go back in the day, and there's many movies like Shawshank Redemption would be maybe the most beloved movie of all time. If you look in top 10 movies of all time rankings, Shawshank Redemption is the movie that comes up the most. It's not usually number one, but it is in practically every top 10 movie list by any movie critic everywhere. So if you're looking about the most respected and beloved movie, and across the board, across the world, Shawshank Redemption comes out on top. And yet that movie, I think, lost money at the box office, came out the same time as Forrest Gump, and it didn't win any awards, it lost money, but Shawshank Redemption, because it made so much money on VHS or DVD sales, sleeper hit, that movie made money, as did Waterworld. Why did I mention Waterworld? Oh yeah, because there's a scene at the end of Waterworld where they go off in the hot air balloon, they escape, and it's similar to near the end of 6 Days, 7 Nights, where they Harrison and Anne Heche finally escape on the reconstructed seaplane, but this time it's more cartoonish because the pirates shoot off the cannon, it goes vertically up and then vertically down and explodes on the ship. They get back to Makatea, which is in French Polynesia. Actually, I've just looked up on Wikipedia now. Makatea is a real island, but the real Makatea is tiny, tiny island. The plateau rises 80 meters. Okay, fairly dramatic maybe for a small island, but nothing like Kauai. So the real Makatea is nowhere near as dramatic as it's shown in the movie. I assumed it was a fictional island, but just near Tahiti. But actually, so when they get back to the resort on Makatea near the end of the movie, Harrison Ford's been shot and he kind of passes out, and he asks Anne Heche to, pilot the plane and get them back to safety. And there you have the link with Indiana Jones saying that he can't land a plane. So even even the end of this movie, he doesn't land the plane. It's actually Anne Heche who lands the plane for him, but he instructs her on what to do. So he's a proper pilot. David Schwimmer's character, Frank Martin, and Jacqueline, her character Angelica, they're at the funeral. So they've assumed that Queen and Robin have passed away because it's been, I don't know, a week or more, and it still seems too early to be having a funeral. But having this funeral by the sea, and then you see the old plane, this seaplane, battered up seaplane coming around the corner and kind of crash landing on the beach, and David Schwimmer's character, he immediately feels guilty because he's engaged and he's had sex. I really appreciate Angelica's character. She's so funny. Like there's it's dirty humor, whatever, lowbrow, but there's this scene where she's seducing him because they're both worried about losing their partners, and it seems like Queen and Robin have died. They assume so, and then she says, we should have sex because like everybody does after a funeral. And then he looks at her like, what are you talking about? Like, not everybody has sex after a funeral. Like, she just says it like she takes it for granted that it's a normal thing. So, in her group of friends or her culture, whatever, that after a funeral everyone's so depressed. So the way to overcome the depression of a funeral is to just quickly have sex with someone. And which reminds me of Wedding Crashers. Love that movie where Will Ferrell, he has an extended cameo where he's encouraging Owen Wilson. The best place to pick up women is at funerals. He said it's not even fair. It's like fishing with dynamite. They're so horny. It's not even fair. Fishing with Dynamite. Maybe got that idea from Crocodile Dundee 2. Another favorite movie. I guess I'll talk about that at some point. So they get back to the resort. You find out they've survived, but both couples have kind of cheated on each other. So Harrison and Anne, they have only kissed. They haven't gone all the way. But Schwimmer and Angelica, Schwimmer and Jacqueline, they've gone all the way. And you have these awkward moments where, especially between Anne Heche and Schwimmer, they're talking about, going back to New York, and, you can tell the vibes change, something's up, and he wants to confess that he's cheated on her, but he still doesn't spill the beans. And then she goes off to see Queen Harrison at the hospital, and it's really well acted scene, kind of awkward because she's going to go back to New York and she's got a fiance, and in Queen's mind, Harrison's mind's like, well, it's over, like we've had this little adventure, but I'm not going to change, you're not going to change, you're going off, so thanks for the memories, kind of thing. And she just looks really bummed out because she's got this kind of hopeful look in her eyes, like this magic, this thing we had going, it was real, right? And you feel like there was real chemistry between them. I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised if they hooked up. Harrison Ford has had affairs with his co-stars before. I mean, who knows what happened, but the chemistry felt real. And yeah, just thinking about it now, I think actually Anne Heche wasn't with Alan when they filmed 6 Days, 7 Nights. I think they hooked up, after the filming had wrapped and sometime between the post-production before the movie was released. So, the lines are blurred between fiction and reality. Harrison Ford, actually a pilot, piloting movies in the movie. He crashes a plane in the movie. He crashes a plane in real life. Anne Heche crashes a car tragically, unfortunately. And Bowfinger, parody of Anne Heche, but in reality, Steve Martin. All these, sorry, I'm all over the place. I'm throwing in the kitchen sink here. I think you can tell that basically I love this movie. So what happens with movies that I really love, such as Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, the previous review I did, I just can't stay on track, and maybe I should write a script, but I don't like writing a script. I mean, I'm new to this game. This is only my third ever movie review on camera, so hopefully I'll improve. Hopefully I'll learn to talk logically and stay on point. But when there's a movie I really love, it just makes me think of so many things. That's why I can't stay on the road. I just keep going off. So I'll try to wrap this up. I'm thinking, why was the acting so good in that scene towards the end of the movie, this awkward moment? Because it seems like at the end of the movie, we're at the end of the story, and Anne Heche Robin, she's going to go back off with her fiancé, and Harrison is telling her, well, thanks for the memories, we had a good time, but it's over now, so good luck, and hope you have a happy marriage with Frank David Schwimmer. And then she just looks so disappointed. She looks totally gutted. And he sees because, I guess in his mind, he's already shut it off, like, he's not going to get married. I mean, in the story, he'd married once, and it was like a failed marriage because his ex-wife had cheated on him and married his best friend. And there's some dialogue about that, and he hasn't had kids. And so it seems real. Great acting. And she's gutted when he says, I'm not going to change my ways. I'm going to stand silent. You're not going to become my co-pilot, and you're going to go off and do your Dazzle magazine thing in New York. And so she walks off, and you think, oh, this is a kind of bummer of a movie. But because the genre, it's a romantic comedy, you're still assuming that there's going to be a final twist, hoping. And this movie delivers. It delivers on the action. It delivers on the romance. It delivers on the jungle, the scenery, the chemistry, the slapstick, the side characters, everything perfect. It's, maybe I said A earlier in this review, maybe I should upgrade it to A+. I really, really love this movie. And she goes back to talk with her fiancé, Frank Schwimmer, and then she's saying, something I got to get off my chest. And so she's about to confess that she's, kissed Harrison Quinn. And before she says that, he confesses to, having sex with Angelica. And it's very funny, he's totally Ross from Friends. And, he said, I thought you were dead. And, it was so much stress and so much grief. And, when humans are under intense stress, and it's almost like he's using the excuse that Angelica gave him about, grief, after a funeral, everybody has sex. It's like he's trying to feed that line to her. And she's looking at him like, what? You had sex with who? With Angelica? Like, she can't believe, because she's about to confess to having feelings for Harrison, but not having sex. And so in that moment, they pan away, and it looks like, so you assume that they're going to break up, but you also, what's the final twist? And then Harrison goes to the airport, but it looks like the plane's about to leave. But then you see Anne Heche, she's got off the plane. She's arguing with the staff about some luggage or something. And so they meet at the airport, and it's the happy ending. She says, "Oh, why are you here at the airport? You should be at the hospital." And he says, "Why aren't you on the plane?" And so obviously they both basically made an excuse to meet. It's like, well, it's destiny. Thinking about the movie was fun, as you can tell. I really love it, and I hope you love it. Margot Robbie loves it, and this was a gem. This should be a cult classic, and let's see, maybe the movie will have a renaissance. I hope so. Okie dokies. Have a good one. Take it easy. Ciao for now.